Yes, we are.
Okay, all right. Okay, so welcome everyone to this talk. It's great to be with you all. This is quite a big group, and so there's a little bit of technical issues that we're dealing with, but yeah, I dare say that the guides will actually work with that and work with all of us. So for those who may not have encountered me, and there will be some, I guess, who watch the recording, I channel my spirit guides. They have a different accent, but they really are quite interesting to listen to. So Barry will interject at any time and possibly ask the guides questions as we go along. We're actually just going to wing this. We've got no particular plan for today, and then there will be questions later on. So let's just, without further ado, let's just start with a prayer for protection and guidance, and then the guides will come through. Great Spirit, we ask for your protection as we join with the world of spirit. We ask that you would help us to open our minds and our lives and our hearts to the information that comes through, so that we will learn and grow. And we ask that you will bless what we are doing here. Amen. So, we greet you, beloved friends, and we would say to you that as we draw towards you at this time, there is immense, immeasurable energy in your world, unprecedented. And we would say to you that you should perhaps understand that this energy has not come unawares to those of us in spirit. This is part of the greater plan. And whilst it may have taken you by surprise, for many years of your time, we in Spirit World have been planning for just this wonderful, unprecedented energy to bring about great change within your world. And we would say to you, it is a time which is immensely difficult for you who live in the earthly plane. Changes at these very high and intensive energy levels are never easy to deal with. And we would say, reminding you that we in spirit never celebrate when one of you incarnates into the earthly plane, because we know that it is going to be filled with trials, tribulations, difficulties that will make it perhaps an uncomfortable life for all of you. But we would remind you that in incarnating into the earthly plane, you learn not only for your spirit self, which thrives whilst you are in this incarnation, you learn also for your group spirit, which is like family in spirit world, not necessarily the same as family by blood in the earthly plane, most often quite different. But the learning you absorb in the earthly plane is taken to those who are your group spirit. And so learning and energy expansion in the earthly plane has an effect on energy expansion in the spirit world. So this is, in effect, a beautiful and wonderful time of transition and transformation for you and for spirit, because it has an effect. And this circumstance that may be attributed to what you consider to be a virus, we would say to you the timing has been impeccable and perfect as always. Those who work within the control room of spirit world for your earthly plane have set this up so that it took place at the exact time within your world when it would have the greatest impact. Can you imagine if a similar virus had taken place when your technology was not at the level it is now? Would that have spread the fear and anxiety which is so prevalent in your world? Not to this extent. So it is imperative that the energy of fear and anxiety is spread in order to ensure the outcome, which is an outcome of change and transformation. Those of you who may have heard the world will suddenly become a peaceful place, we would say to you, ignore that completely. The earthly plane cannot become a place of peace. It is not intended to be a place of peace. If you were constantly at peace, then you may as well be within the spirit world. And that doesn't mean that there is only total peace in spirit world. But we would say to you, the learning comes because in this world there is chaos and turmoil. It is essential to the greater growth within your world. The Lady Berry, would you like perhaps to ask questions?
Thank you, Cynthia, and what an honor it is to be here today to ask these questions. My question really is, if the world is not meant to be a peaceful place, then are we wasting our time working for peace? How can we contribute to the greater good?
Well, everyone does contribute to the greater good. It doesn't mean that you are wasting your time working towards peace. There could be greater turmoil if there is no chance to work towards peace. So each must make their choice. But we would say to you, be careful when you condemn those who create wars. Be careful when you condemn those who murder. Be careful when you condemn those who do what you think is a non-peaceful action, because they are part of the greater plan. And the greater plan is about learning. We would say many in the spirit world apply to incarnate into your earthly plane at this time, because it is one of the material planes that has excessive chaos and turmoil. So the learning is intense, the learning is quicker. But we would say to you, not everyone in spirit world is given permission to incarnate at this time. Only those who are strong enough as spirit. You see, your perception from the earthly plane in the human form is somewhat limited. You see your earthly life as being the most important. And it is interesting because you acknowledge certain beings as being alive and others not so much. If you look at the virus at this time, there is talk in many places that the virus is not alive. But we would say if you change your perception, you will begin to see that smaller things have lives that may not equate to being alive in your terms, no heartbeat, perhaps no breath, but they still have life. And in that way, if you look smaller, you will see that there are many things that mankind is actually killing off. And that is part of the greater plan. It is a war against the virus at this present time, and it always is. Whenever there is an illness or disease, the mankind tries to kill it off because they will want to survive. And that is part of what is required. It is part of the greater plan. But the lessons are learned in doing that, all right. So at some level, you are fighting. But we would say to you, the material planes are about survival, are about giving you that impression. But you can also have a perspective of a far greater vision. If you look perhaps at the galaxy and you see yourself as a speck on Mother Earth, and that speck may not be considered to be in the greater galaxy of great value. So there are all these circumstances that are different depending on perspective. You are each led to do what you are required to do. So some will be led to find peace, to strive for greater peace. And mankind as a whole has learned a great deal. If you look over the history that you have of perhaps 1,000 to 3,000 years, which gives you a fairly good history, you will see that there has been progress. And there is, to a certain extent, progress towards peace. But this world cannot be a world of peace. There are no material planes that are entirely peaceful, because each one strives still to remain a unique entity, an individual. And it is only when you get to spirit world and there is a striving towards oneness. There is in your world a striving towards oneness, but remember that even those who you consider to be criminals may strive to form oneness as well. It is all part of the greater plan. You have free will choice without question. But if you look at the mind of Great Spirit, the creative mind that created everything that is, everything you know, and so much more besides, you will see that that mind so far overshadows yours that your choices are quite obvious. And as much as you are making that choice yourself, and it is your decision, the choice that you will make is obvious to that great mind. Have we answered that question?
Yes, thank you. So as people who really try to help and to try to make the world a better place, what is the most important thing that we personally should be focusing on right now? There are so many social ills. So what should we be focusing on in the bigger picture that would help those souls who are really struggling?
Well, we would say to you, the only choice since last year in your world, the only true choice is to choose between peace and discomfort. And that has not been an easy choice, because as the circumstantial discomfort grows, so people cling to the discomfort. And it is important to understand that you should cling to inner peace. If you have peace within, it will resonate into the world around you. And as that vibration of peace moves, so it brings back to you greater peace. But if you have discomfort and a lack of peace within, then your vibration will set off a vibration that changes the circumstances around you. Anxiety breeds anxiety. And we would say to you, peace breeds peace. So we would say that in making your choices, you need to say to yourself, is this going to bring me peace? And that may seem self-centered, but whatever you choose will resonate into the world around you. It cannot change all within the world. If we were to say to you, take someone who has been raised in an environment where fighting and killing others is required in order to survive, you cannot simply say to them, no, become more peaceful, stop doing that, because they cannot. But they are helping those who need to bring peace to find a deeper sense of peace. In your world, it is all about comparisons. Because you live at an emotional level, and emotions are part of what you take with you to spirit world to learn the lessons of the earthly plane. And the deeper you feel, for example, sadness, the greater you can feel joy. So that is true also of peace. You have to have discomfort and disquiet in order to find peace. It is essential. Can you understand that?
Yes, thank you. I can. I'm curious though, because I've heard many people speaking about this virus being a sign of the end of days. Could you speak into that a little for us?
Well, yes, it is an ending. The end of time, the end of the earth, the end of humankind. No, not at all. This must go on. The plan is certainly not to end your planet and the material world in which you live. The plan is to end what has been the choices you have made. Can you make different choices now? Is this the wake-up call that says to you, what has been before, I can no longer continue? Because that is where the essence of this learning lies. Your world must change. The economies will collapse around the world. And that will make you think, how can we do things differently? How can we actually create what we would call a disruption of what has been before? And mankind was starting to do it, but at a very, very small level. Greed has still become a major part of corporations, individuals, and greed is taught. It is taught even to children. And so we would say, when the greed becomes too much within your world, there is a recurring cycle of breaking the pattern. And if you look back along the history, not only of mankind, but all of the earthly plane, there are opportunities to break the patterns. And this is one of these. It is an opportunity to break the pattern. And it is a beautiful, beautiful one, a wonderful opportunity to try to do things differently. And already you are learning to do things differently in many ways. How many more are becoming attached to the plant life and becoming more grateful for it? And we would say to you that must continue. It must be a pattern that continues, and it is inevitable that it will, because at this point, this is set to continue for quite some time in your world. The reaction to it has been a reaction of fear. And if you actually look at what we would call the death toll in your world, of course, that is simply a portal into spirit world. But if you look at that and you look at the reasons for it happening, you will see that it is happening in such a way that individuals are given the opportunity to make the transition, perhaps because they are fearful rather than because of any illness at this time.
So our education system, our economics, our business systems, all of that is set to change.
Yes, and families also. Families cannot continue as they have been, because families in your world have let go of what we would call a greater family unity. And that doesn't just mean blood, but it is important that there is a recreation of bonds. And this time of isolation has led people to appreciate bonds more. And so it will change all of that. It will bring to mind, and many will choose not to change, but they will not thrive in future. Those who choose to change, they are in a state of excitement now, anticipation of what lies ahead. And that comes from a base of peace. Can you understand that?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. And I'm aware that we don't have very much time left. So would it be appropriate for me to invite people to raise their hands electronically if they would like to ask a question, or else just to type it into the chat group?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, certainly. We'll answer questions.
So if there are any questions, there should be a little, just underneath the participant list is an electronic invitation to raise your hand, at which stage I will unmute you to ask your question, or you can type it into, our participants can type it into the group chat. Anybody?
Oh, the question, should you be eating meat? It comes up often. And we would say to you, we understand the concern about this. But again, we would say to you, it is about perception, all right? So you, as humans, value animals more highly than plants. But whatever you eat in your world, you are required to kill it. So we would say to you, there are those who would choose not to eat meat, and that is their choice. But your world is not yet ready to allow everyone from a perspective of health to actually change from a diet that contains meat. You have not yet the science to actually replace adequately what you would call amino acids. There are many who do live on a diet that is meatless, but we would say to you, remind yourself that plants have life too. It is not about not killing others. Death will come to everyone on this planet, and ultimately to Mother Earth herself. But we would say to you, keep in mind that it is about being grateful for the life that gives you life. All right?
Thank you, Cynthia. I have a request. I have a number of questions that have come up, but the first one that I'm going to take, I'll just take them in order. Could you tell us about the energy of the week?
All right. Well, the energy of the week, we give a talk and meditation once a week that is recorded, and it is a very valuable thing. At this time of intense energy, energy has always been everything on your planet and in our world, but at this time of such intense energy, having a knowledge of the energy is important. And more importantly, having a meditative tool to work with it, so that you can break through the barriers of what would be your normal response and help you to make the transition and transformation. So the energy of the week talk and meditation is something that can be of value no matter what your life or lifestyle or circumstance. Yes.
Thank you. So is the lockdown, the current lockdown, just returning to the virus situation, is the current lockdown the right thing to do, or should we be letting the virus run its course?
Well, the right thing, it was anticipated that it would take place, and it is important to the growth. It is important to the transition that has been anticipated. Whether it is the right thing, we would say to you, a virus will need to run its course no matter what happens. You cannot remain isolated from it forever. So it will run its course, and it will move around the world. The isolation, perhaps it slowed it down, but a virus, unless it is contained within one building at one time, it is impossible to contain it. Now it is all over the world. You cannot lock down completely from this virus. At some point, you will be exposed to it. That is the essence of a virus and the essence of humankind at this time.
And a last question, I don't think we're going to have time for more than this, but thank you for that. Do the guides have any advice on coping mechanisms from an economic perspective in the short term?
Well, we would say to you, it is about making different choices. And what becomes a choice that is of important learning for mankind at this time is the barter system, sharing, caring, creating communities where you can actually serve each other. When it comes to economy, it is a difficult circumstance. It is inevitably going to collapse. Economy around the world must collapse. And whilst some will survive and at first take advantage of others, those who have, let us say, more wealth, the time will come when the wealth will need to change. But communities will be built because of this, that will help each other to survive within the communities. And they will be communities that become the new family that we have spoken of. Economically, well, there is no simple answer to say to you, simply get money in this way or another. For everyone's circumstances are different. But we would say if you are struggling financially, you need to work together even now as a community. Build each other up, support each other, create pathways for each other. And that will be the way to go forward. That is the way that is being created. Yes?
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. I'm aware that there are a number of other questions, and perhaps we can just take one more if you're happy for that.
Yes.
The question is, when will the world start to continue? When will travel bans be lifted, schools return? How much longer do we have to live under these circumstances?
Well, each government will decide differently, of course. But we would say to you, what will happen is that they will lift lockdowns in many places, travel will begin, the virus will raise its head again, lockdown will begin again. So it is a cycle, and for most of this year there will be difficulty. But we would say that within 6 months, people will rearrange themselves as lockdowns are lifted, and there will be a great deal of movement to create opportunities, anticipating the virus rising once again. But it will be dealt with differently then. There may be some who create lockdowns again, but this year is not going to be a particularly easy one from that perspective.
Thank you, Cynthia. My takeaway from today is simply to focus more on the peace within, and that will help us all to find the answers that we're looking for and to make the correct choices. So I'm very, very grateful for this time. I know that there are other questions, but we have come to an end. And we thank you so much for your time and your presence and your loving guidance.
All right. We leave you all with our great and unconditional love for each of you. We live in love.
Blessings and thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Perry.
I'm going to end the meeting now, but I'm just reminding people that tomorrow at 10 o'clock we meet again. Thank you.